この前パパがやった時に
Hey everybody, and welcome. Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. I'm honored to have with me Hideo Kojima here in London. For the next hour, we're going to be talking all about your games and your career and taking questions from your fans all around the world on Twitter using the hashtag live to all the people that are streaming games up there. Not Ground Zeroes until next week, but do you have anything to say to all your fans who are watching on Twitch?
今見てるファンの方に伝えたいことありますか？もうすぐ発売なんで、ぜひですね、じっくり楽しんでください。楽しんでください。Well, we're almost in, it's almost release date for Ground Zero, so please go ahead.
Fantastic. Well, Ground Zero is obviously coming out around the world, and we're going to get into that. But first of all, let's talk about why we're both here in London this week, because the BAFTA Video Game Awards took place last night. We had a good time there, and you had the honor of presenting the Fellowship Award. Hauser up there, accepting the award. And tell me, I mean, that it was a great experience, but tell me, you know, Rockstar, what do you think what was so special about that award in your eyes, and Rockstar? Why do you think, what do you think the game industry can learn from the guys at Rockstar?
昨日のバフタの受賞でロックスターにフェローシップアワードを贈呈したわけなんですけど、そのフェローシップアワードのなぜ贈呈されたと思いますか？ロックスターがゲーム業界にどんなことをしてに対してどんなことをしてきたと思いますか？グランドセフトオートが出る前のゲームと出た後のゲームは大きく違います。Well, for GTA, there's a before GTA and there's an after GTA for games. それまではやっぱりそのゲームデザイナーが、こういう遊び方をしなさいっていうルールを決めてユーザーに提供してたのですけども、グランドセフトオートっていうのはオープンワールドで、ロードも裏でなされていてどこまでも行けるし何をしてもいいっていう、これほとんどゲームデザインじゃなくなるんですよ、それをしてしまうと。でその、オープンなところの上にゲームデザインを構築するっていう手法になので、それまでのゲームと彼らがやったゲームとは大きく異なります。It pretty much destroyed what game design was, and on top of that freedom, the guys from Rockstar were able to make a unique game design on top of all this freedom that they got to the user. So that definitely changed what game design was up to that point. 2001年メタルギアソリッド2が出た時に GT の3が出たと思うんですけど、その当時ダン・ハウザーと一緒にご飯を食うたりしたんですけど、うちのプログラマーに、GT を見せました。でその時に僕はどこまでも行けて裏ロードをしていろんなことができるゲームを作りたいとずっと言ってたんですけども、その、どこでも行けるような中で潜入したいって言ってたんですけど、そんなゲームはできませんといううちのプログラマーは言ってたんですけど、じゃあこのゲームは何ですかっていうのを見せた時にうちのスタッフもプログラマーもすごく仰天して、それほどの大きな衝撃でした。だから僕の中では GT が出たのはゲームの長い歴史の中で紀元前と紀元後ぐらいの大きなイベントではありました。So in 2001, Metal Gear Solid 2 was launched. Around that time, also GTA 3 came out. Around that time, actually, I met up and had lunch dinner with Dan Hauser. And up to that point, I had been telling our programmers that I wanted a game where, you were loading all the stages in the background, so the player had the freedom to go anywhere they wanted. do whatever they wanted, and based on this, do some different kind of filtration. And all my programmers told me was, you know what, that is impossible. That's simply not something that can be done. So I showed them this game, GTA 3, and just like, so what is this? And what do you have to say against this? And our staff was really impressed. They didn't have any words. They were so impressed by what they had achieved. So it is something that had that big of an impact on us. For me, in the history of games, there is before GTA and after GTA is pretty much like a BC and a AD. It is that important.
あとはそのロックスターの、彼らは IP をすごく大切にするので、普通は毎年量産をしたりスピンオフをしたりっていうビジネスなので、そういう作り方をしますが、彼らは一作一作時間をかけて、でプロモーションもなるべく控えて、提供するというか、その、ショーにも出展しないような形であれだけのセールスを確保するっていう特殊なやり方をしてますから、そこも非常に目立っているところだと思います。
And also, the guys at Rockstar are really, really careful with their IPs, the way they handle them. If a game is as successful, what most companies would do would be release every year a game similar to that, or in this series, or a spin-off every year. But they really take their time developing each of their titles. Also, the promotion is also quite unique. They're not always on shows, on events. And despite doing that, or because of doing that, having those sales numbers, that's something really unique and impressive that they have achieved.
Excellent. Well, it was a great moment last night to have you there with the Hausers. So we will now move on, though, to you and your career and your games. First thing that I wanted to ask you about was, lots of great games were there last night at BAFTA, from The Last of Us winning Game of the Year, Tearaway, Brothers, lots of other games recognized. What games have you played recently that you've been very inspired by, or you look at and say, oh, I wish I would have made that game?
でそのギドはやっぱりハウサーたちといるのはすごい感動しましたが、今度は小島監督のキャリアの話にしたいと思うんですけど、昨日のバフターでいろんなゲームがありました。テアウェイとかブラザーズとかで、その中で最近ご自身がやったゲームでインスピレーションを得た、あるいはこれは自分が作りたかったゲームだなと思ったのは何でしょうか。
グランセプトオート5はやっぱり、ずっとやりたかったんですけど、23時間やってあまりにも細かいところがよくできていて、で僕らのゲームっていうのはそういう細かいところでこうやればああなるっていう反応をいかにできるかっていうことを徹底して作ってきたんですけども、で彼らのゲームをそれを見るとすごく作り込まれていて、なのですごく嫉妬してですね、でそれで途中でやめてしまったと、なので最後までやってないんですけど、それぐらいすごかったです、グランセプトオート5は。
Well, I have to bring up again GTA. Played that game. I'll be honest, I only played it for 2-3 hours, and after that I stopped playing it. The reason for that is that game has a lot of detail, and for the games we create, we also put a lot of attention to detail, going into by doing this you affect that action, putting a lot of attention to those kind of details. So when I started playing GTA and started to see all the details that they have, all the small things that they have put in, I'll be honest, I was full of envy and I couldn't keep on playing. I stopped playing at that point.
本当に僕が好きになるゲームって最後までできないですね。やってるとどうしても嫉妬してしまうんで、途中でやめてしまうというのは僕の中で一番リスペクトするゲームなんですけど、だから、ラストバースもすごくいいゲームですけども、僕の中では昨日のベストゲームはやっぱりグランセプトオート5になります。
Yeah, so that's something that usually happens for the games I really like. I can never play them towards up to the end because I get really jealous, and I feel a lot of envy, and I cannot play them until the end. So for Last of Us, I really respect that game. I think that is a fantastic game. For me personally, the best game was GTA 5.
All right. Switching gears a little bit, I want to talk to you about the Japanese video game industry and what's going on there now. We know, Xbox One is not out. Japan, Nintendo, the Wii U continues to struggle. PlayStation 4, on the positive side, seems like it had a good launch. I saw that you were there with Andy House and everyone in Tokyo. What's the perception of gaming right now in Japan? I mean, how are people feeling about the video game industry?
ちょっと話題を変えて日本のゲーム業界に関してお聞かせください。Xbox One もまだリリースされてないし Wii U もあんまり状況が芳しくないし PS4 はかなりよくいってると思いますしPS4 の確か日本のローンチにも小島さんがいるのを見かけましたけど、今の日本のゲーム業界はどんな感じでしょうか。
5年もっと前かな、いわゆるコアなコンシューマーでじっくりゲームを遊んで、ゲームから自分の糧になるようなものを得るっていうそういうスタイルのゲームじゃなくて、携帯ゲーム機かソーシャルみたいなものしかあんまり今の若者がやらなくなってます日本の、若者は。なのでいわゆるコンシューマーの、いわゆるコアなゲーム離れみたいなのが、かなり進んでいると思います。
Well, this late couple of years, the trend has kind of shifted away from where the core gamers would get a game and take their time with that game and play up to all its details. I think the market has kind of shifted from there. Right now, the gaming market is much more focused on portable games, on social games. I think this is the case, unfortunately, for most Japanese young people. The consumers have kind of shifted away from the core gamers.
携帯とか、スマホとかそうですけど、手軽に非常に便利で、いつでも遊べるっていうことで彼らは遊んでるんですけども、もっとコアな、そのゲームに入るためには自分なりの覚悟と準備をしないといけないっていうような遊びには最近の若者はあんまり触れてないので、そういう意味ではプレイステーション4が売れてるので、プレイステーション4に触れて初めてそういう世界があるというか、そういうエンターテインメントがあるっていうことを彼らが知って、その先、やっぱりその携帯の、いつでも遊べるようなゲームも面白いですけども、やっぱりじっくり腰を据えて遊ぶゲームも面白いんだと。しかもそのゲームを遊ぶことで、いろんなことを考えさせてくれるっていう、そういうゲームもあるんだっていうことを、日本の若者たちにも分かってほしいです。
So most games, portable games, games that you play on your smartphone are easy. They're practical. You can play them easily anytime you want, all the time, wherever you are. And I like that as well. But I also like the kind of games, the core games where you kind of have to prepare. You have to sit down and take your time, prepare to play it. People now, the young people in Japan, I think they have lost contact with this kind of games. They don't even know these games exist. So with the success that the PS4 is enjoying in Japan, I want people to realize that there's this kind of entertainment that some people may have not tried or haven't tried recently. There's something beyond those very practical games. There's these games that you have to sit down and dedicate some time and get you somewhere unique and give you something that you won't be able to find in other games. I really want people, Japanese people, to notice that, to realize that.
You obviously have Ground Zeroes, coming out here shortly. You're on press tour, talking about here in Europe. Given what you said about Japan, I mean, how do you feel about the launch of Ground Zeroes? Are you excited? Are you nervous? I know it's been lots of twists and turns the past few months around the game. How are you feeling right now about it?
でそんな状況の中でグランドゼローズが近々発売されますし、ヨーロッパでもこの発売ツアーの一部として、ここにいらっしゃると聞いていますけど、日本でもヨーロッパでもそんな中でグランドゼローズがリリースされるというのはその心境を教えてください。
ですね、昨日ダンハウザーと話した時に彼はグランセプトオート5が終わってしばらくゆっくりできるっていうことを言ってたんですけども、本来ならば、ゲームをリリースした後は僕もしばらくちょっとゆっくりして次の新作のことを考えるんですけども、今回のプロローグなので当然グラウンドゼローズと並行してファントムペインを作ってますから、 いわゆるメタルギアソリッド4とかピースウォーカーの後のような感じではないですね。これからさらにしんどくなるっていうのがあるんで、そういう感覚を持ちながらも、リリースデーは非常に楽しみにはしています。
So this is one conversation that popped up yesterday when I was talking with Dan Hauser. He was talking how right now he's taking a small break after the release of his game. And usually that will be the case for me, but unfortunately, but because Ground Zeroes is a prologue, I'm developing on parallel with the Phantom Pain, with the main part of the game. So it's quite unlike what happened with Metal Gear Solid 4 or Peace Walker, where after releasing those games, I had a small break, some time to take things calmly and take some time off. This is not the case this time. This is the way I've chosen to develop these games. So right now, I know that with the release of Ground Zeroes, I'm really excited about that. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to see what people think of it. But at the same time, I know that things are just getting tougher for Phantom Pain.
Absolutely. We're going to get more to that in a little bit. But let's talk more about Ground Zeroes. And, you're known as a, prolific storyteller with lots of narrative in your games. I think one of the things a lot of fans have been wondering about this game is how you're approaching it. And I know your philosophy for this game is different than the typical sort of Hideo Kojima game that people have come to expect, especially from Metal Gear, which is very lengthy story and cutscenes and all that. And you're approaching this in sort of a different way with thinking about replayability and whatnot. This is a chance for you to talk directly to your fans and kind of explain your philosophy about the game. So could you maybe tell us a bit about how you're approaching it?
グランドゼロスの話をちょっと続けさせていただくと、今まで小島監督は特に優れたストーリーテラーとして知られていますし、優秀なゲームを作る中でも、今回はそのアプローチを変えた、ゲームデザインとかゲームを作る上でのアプローチを変えた、今まで、どちらかというと長いカットシーンの中である哲学を、それをどうやって変えてか。
最初26年前にメタルギアを作った時はゲームにストーリーがなかったので、ストーリーを入れますということで作ったのがメタルギアです。で、カットシーンもそうですけど、いわゆるアクションゲームというゲームのジャンルでいかにストーリーを入れていくかということでカットシーンを入れたり、リニアなゲームでそのレールを引いてそこにプレイヤーがここに来た時にイベントを発動させるみたいな、そういう仕組みのゲームを作りました。それが今のメタルギアソリッド、これまでのメタルギアソリッドですし、リニアのゲームはそういうふうになっていると思います。
So 26 years ago, when I first started working on this franchise, games had no story, so I decided to put a story into games. Through Metal Gear, I wanted to introduce as much story as possible through cutscenes. It was an action game. It was not supposed to have a deep story, and through cutscenes, I want to relate that to people. And so you had a linear game that will allow me to tell a story. And this is what Metal Gear Solid franchise has been up to this point.
で昔映画のようなゲームっていうのはなかったのでそれで作ったんですけども、今そういう映画のようなリニアなゲームがいっぱいあって、で大体10時間ぐらいプレイして、でオンラインモードがあればオンラインモードをちょっと遊んで、それを中古に売って新しいゲームを買ってまたそれを繰り返すっていうか、ある種、物語性のあるゲームを消費しているような、そういう現状があるんですよね。でそこがちょっと僕は違うかなっていうのがあって、今回作り方を変えました。
So back some time ago, there were many games that were movie-like. These days, you have a lot of games that are like movies, linear games that you play for 10 hours. The people buy them. They play around, let's say, 10 hours. They sell them. They buy a new game. So I think there's a situation where these story-driven games have become kind of consumables. I think that's kind of the situation. It is part of the situation we have right now.
もともとファミコンのゲームとかアーケードのゲームっていうのは一回解いても、何回でもやるわけですよね。 まあ何回もプレイすることでまた違う、ことを発見したり、違うプレイ感をこう取得したりっていうことがあるので続けるわけなんですけども、そもそもゲームってそこが一番重要なので、メタルギアソリッドもまあストーリーがなかった時代に作ったものなので、こんなに世の中にこうレールゲームがあるんであれば、もう一度昔のファミコンで熱中した時のようなああいうゲームですよね。何回遊んでも、そのゲームを手放さずに遊び続けるような、そういうプレイスタイルのゲームにしたいっていうことで、今回オープンワールドの、舞台でプレイヤーの自由度を与えてミッションをこなすような、まあ、グラウンドゼロズとかファントムペインというシステムに大きく変更します。
So, but when the first games a while ago, when it was era of the Famicom or NES, these arcade games, these were games that you would play once, you would clear, and you would go back and keep going back to these games, because every time you play them, you would get something different, some different experience, some different gaming elements, something, you would find something different. So, well, when I first started working on Metal Gear, games had no story, and I had been focusing a lot of the story. But this replay value, this feeling that makes you go back over and over to the same game, that is fundamental in games. Right now that we have so many story-driven games, I wanted to go back in time and put myself again into that era where I was so obsessed with these Famicom games and I kept playing over and over again. So that's part of the reason I added all this freedom inside of the games.
まあ、カットシーン、メタルギアはカットシーンばっかりだとよく言われるんで、メディアの方にも会うたんびに次のゲームはカットシーンがどのぐらい多いんやっていう、まあ、そういう質問が多かったんですけども、今回はなるべくカットシーンを抑えてプレイヤーが自由に行動できるゲームなので、ワンショットでカメラもつなげますけど、カットシーンで説明しないものがいっぱいあるわけですよ。でカットシーンで説明しない情報とか伏線がゲーム中のいろんなところに散らばっていて、それをプレイヤーが自分で拾って頭の中でつなぐと一つのストーリーテリングというかストーリーに、つながるような、やり方に変わってます。
So a lot of people have identified the Metal Gear Solid franchise with cutscenes. Often when I'm interviewed by people from the media, they ask me, well, how many cutscenes will you have in your next game? How many hours of cutscenes you will have in your next game? But for Ground Zeroes, I tried something different. There are cutscenes, but I try to put as few cutscenes as possible. I want to really focus on how much freedom would the player have. So the cutscenes are one shot connected directly to gameplay, and also there are a lot of story elements that are not explained through cutscenes. It's rather information that is scattered through the game. The player will have to go there, find different elements that will start constructing a story in the player's mind. And once they're done with the game, the player will have a unique story depending on these story elements that they picked up through the game.
まあ、ファントムペインも、グラウンドゼロズもじゃあストーリーがないのかって言われるとそうじゃなくて、今までのリニアなストーリーテリングではなくて、そういう自由度があるので、そこでプレイヤーがミッションいくつもいくつもこなしていくんですけども、そのミッションをつなげていく、もしくはそのフィールドに散らばっているいろんな情報をプレイヤーがつなげた時に一つの大きなうなぎの、ストーリーが生まれてくるっていう、そういうストーリーテリングに、チャレンジしています。
So then a lot of people wonder, well, then for the Phantom Pain, for Ground Zeroes, is there no story? And that's not the case. What I trying to do here is stepping away from constructing a linear story, focusing on the freedom that the player will have. So in these games, through all the missions that the player keeps doing, they will find different story elements that they will put together. And whenever they put them together, or for example, when they put together all these story elements that are spread through one of the stages or one of the missions, or in all the missions, when they put this together, then this will become one big story that the player is part of.
All right. We've got thousands of questions that have come in from fans all around the world where they want to ask you absolutely anything. So we're going to start going through some of these. These are lots of questions that people submitted on Twitter. when you're actively tweeting, so if people don't follow you, they should. But let's just get into some of them, and hopefully you can answer most of these, but we'll see. So the first question comes from MB Damiani, and he says, the original Metal Gear Solid had multiple endings. Do you think that's possible for future Metal Gear games to revisit this concept?
最初のについてからの質問なんですけど、もともとメタルギアには複数のエンディングがあったんですけど、今後のゲームにこういうものはありますか？
ですね、メタルギアソリッド1の複数のエンディングっていうのはちょっと普通の複数のエンディングではなくて、途中でプレイヤーが捕まって、拷問を受けるわけなんですよ。でその拷問に屈しないっていう2つの分岐になるんですけども、そのどちらもプレイヤーに体験してもらおうとしたがためのマルチエンディングなので、そういう意味で言うと、今後もあるかもしれませんけど、本来のそのストーリーが、最終的にマルチになるっていうようなものは、作らないつもりです。
Well, this ending in Metal Gear Solid 1, so the player at some point was tortured, and I wanted to experience and to have the player go through this situation where the player doesn't surrender to the torture and does surrender to the torture. I wanted for people to experience both of these routes. That's why I made this two different patterns where you could go with or without enduring the torture. In that regard, that may happen again in the future, but in the original regard of having multiple endings where the story kind of branches off and there's several different versions of the same story, I don't plan to do that, and I didn't plan to do that back then.
マルチエンディングというよりもプレイヤーが、いろんなミッションとかがあって、そのミッションをやるやらないによって読後感というかですね、そういうのが結構人によって変わるような仕組みになってます。
So I'm trying to create something where more than having multiple endings, I want the people that go through several missions in their own way and being able to reflect that on how the game feels afterwards, depending on how they go through these several missions.
All right. Next question comes from Coyote Kanye on Twitter, who says, will the camp... Interesting names on Twitter. Will the Camp Omega level be revisited in the Phantom Pain, which is the level from Ground Zeroes?
カンプオメガキャンプは TBP に出てきますかっていう質問です。
ですね、グランドゼルズを持ってる人はですね、オメガキャンプの違うミッションが遊べるようになります。今のところ。
This is not final yet. It could change in the future, but as of now, the plan is that people that have ground zeros when they acquire the Phantom Pain could be playing through different missions in Camp Omega and ground zeros. Sorry, in the Phantom Pain.
あとちょっと大きな仕掛けがあるんで、これもゲーム業界初の試みなんでちょっと言えないんですけど、多分それでそうかと、これはゲームでしかできないことだっていうのが皆さん分かってもらえると思います。
And also rolling Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm trying something new, something that I don't think I've ever even heard of in the game industry. I can't talk too much about that yet, but hopefully I'll be able to surprise a lot of people with that.
All right, that's a tease. Hopefully we'll hear more about that. Next question comes from Zalman on Twitter. Zalman wants to know, will Snake be in the new Smash Brothers game?
いや、それ僕が作ってないんで出ないと思いますよ、新しいやつは。
I'm not working on that game, so I don't know, but I don't think that's likely.
わからないですけど、桜井さんこれ見てたらスネーク出してください。
I mean, well, if Mr. Sakurai is watching this, well, please use Snake.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully he's watching on Twitch in Japan. Next question comes from the Snake Soup. Would like to know who could have the most interesting Twitter handle will be part of the game today. Outside of MGS Touch and iDroid app, Kojima Productions hasn't done much with mobile. Are you interested in mobile gaming? You talked a bit about that as a trend in Japan. Are we going to see you do a mobile game?
もともとそのアドベンチャーゲームとか作ってたので、今日本で流行ってるようななんていうんですかね、パズルとかカードとかガチャがあるようなそういうゲームを作りたいわけじゃないんですけども、モバイルとか、携帯機で、アドベンチャーも含め、ちょっと手軽に遊べる濃いゲームは作りたいので、そこは、いつになるか分かりませんけど、もしかしたら作るかもしれません。
Well, I originally was creating adventure games. So, well, currently in Japan the trend is for mobile games or puzzles or card games or things like that. I'm not too interested in those kind of games. I've never been developing those games. But I would be interested sometime in the future, maybe, make a very practical, easy to play adventure game that is quite deep. I have no idea when I'll be able to do this, but I will maybe sometime in the future I would like to try to work on this.
昨日はバフタで、表彰されてましたペーパースペースあペーパープリーズとかすごい面白そうやったんで、ああいうのも好きなので、ああいうのも作りたいなと思います。今はちょっとファントムペンで忙しいんであれですけど。
Yes, sir. The BAFTAs I saw this game I hadn't heard of before. Papers, Please. That looked like a very, very interesting game. I love those kind of games, so hopefully someday in the future I can get myself to develop one of those. Unfortunately, right now I have my full time dedicated to the Phantom Pain.
Right. Excellent. Next question comes from Lenny Hakola, and he says, when will we get to see Metal Gear Online?
メタルギアオンラインはいつ見れるんですか？
ですね、今ロススタジオともともと MGO を作ってた日本のうちのスタッフとで、オンラインは作ってます。でグラウンドゼロズは当然間に合わなかったんですけども、ファントムペインと同時リリースを考えています。
Well, right now, so our Kojima Productions LA studio is working on it, as well as together with our original MGO team. They are both working on it. Of course, we didn't complete it by the time of Ground Zeroes, but by the time the Phantom Pain is released, we expect it to be ready.
Okay. And do we know when people will hear about that, or just in the future?
Sorry.
Well, he was asking also, I think, when will people find out about it, what you're doing with it?
それは MGO ではどんなものを試みてるか、どんなものをやってるかっていうのはまた今後リリース発表があるっていうことです。
そうですね。今のところはまだ、言えないというか言わないです。
Right now, yeah, we're keeping it a little secret right now, but in the future people will hear about that.
Okay. Next question comes from Adovani on Twitter, and it says, what's your impressions of the Oculus Rift and virtual reality tech in general? Have you seen the Oculus Rift?
Oculus Rift に関してどう思いますか？それ以外のバーチャルリアリティの技術に関してどう思いますか？
ですね、結構そういう新しいもの好きなのでいろんなものを試してます。
Well, I'm really fond of new things. I like to try new things, so I've tried Oculus Rift and developed these technologies.
この間も某研究所に行ってそれを体験してきました。
The other day I went to an unnamed laboratory and was able to try some of these technologies.
なんですけど、僕は3D 用意をするので5分ぐらいで帰ってしまいました。気持ちよくなったんで。
But there's also a big problem. I usually get pretty sick with 3D stuff, so after 5 minutes I was done.
僕は酔うんですけど、そういうテクノロジーは好きなので、しかも、そういうテクノロジーを使うことで今までできなかったこともできるようになりますから、どうしようかな、制作、開発は進めているというか、いつ発表できるか分かりませんけど、そういうデバイスを使ったゲームっていうのも視野に入れています。
So, well, I get sick very easily with those kind of technologies, but I'm a huge fan. I like all these technologies, so we are constantly researching this. And also one thing I love is with all these technologies, things that were supposed to be impossible up to that point all of a sudden become possible. So how do I put this? We're constantly researching and developing, and whenever I'm creating something, I do keep this in mind and within my range. So yeah, so hopefully sometime in the future we'll be able to announce more things.
バーチャルの世界に自分がいるっていうことはあらかじめ分かってるんですけど、だから例えば車の中に自分が乗っていて、ここにボンネットがあるっていうのが見えてるだけ。実際にここはバーチャル空間にしかないので、ないことは分かってるんですけど、自分は立てない、もしくは、バーチャル空間のビルの上に立ってて下に落ちることはないんですけど、それ以上一歩を踏み出せないっていう感覚っていうのはちょっとこれまでのゲームにはなかったものなので、そこの要素を逆に使うことで結構こう精神的にこう、プレイヤーの人をいじるようなですね、そういう新しいゲームができるかなと思って注目はしてます。
So even though the player is constantly aware that he or she is placed in a virtual world, let's say you're in a car and you put this virtual reality space and you see something that is on top of you. There's a wall, there's a rooftop. Even though you know you're in a virtual space, the player cannot stand up. Or let's say in a building, you know that you're not in a building, but the virtual reality space puts you in a building. And despite you knowing, you're being perfectly aware that you're not there, you cannot take a step forward because it feels like you would fall. So these things are really interesting. These feelings are things that were not during the game development beforehand. I think this offers new ways to approach, to read psychologically the player more. So these are definitely elements that I want to play with moving forward.
Okay, well hopefully we'll hear more soon. Next question comes from Tech Zero, and it says, Mr. Kojima, what Konami game franchise would you want to direct or reboot if you had the chance?
コナミの中のフランチャイズでリブートあるいは自分が手掛けたいフランチャイズ。
サイレントヒル。
I don't know, Silent Hill?
Okay. Any sense of what would you want to do with Silent Hill?
サイレントヒルで何かやりたいことになります。
僕怖がりなんで、怖がりが作るホラーゲームはすごい怖いものになると思うんで、作るとすると毎日悪夢に見されると思うんで、まあ覚悟を決めて、やるんであればやりたいと思います。
There's a problem. I'm easily scared of many things, so a guy that is such a chicken and is so easily scared making a scary game, I'm very confident that something horrifying would come out from that. But on the other hand, I would have to prepare myself to have nightmares every single day. So hopefully sometime in the future I'm able to work on this, but I would really need to prepare to have daily nightmares.
Okay. Next question, this is an easy one, came from Brad. Brad says, when will Shinkawa get on Twitter?
新川さんがいつツイッター始まるんですか？
ですねこれ僕に聞かれても分かるよ困るんですけど、しんちゃんはツイッターしないと思いますね。
I mean, that's not me to answer. It's kind of difficult when you ask me these questions, but I hope...
He works for you, you can tell him on Twitter, right?
上司だから分かるんですけど、 But I don't think he will jump on Twitter.
すごい誘ってるんですけど、なかなかしない。
I've been telling him to join Twitter for quite some time, but he doesn't seem to find out the idea.
その割には隠れて Facebook やってるみたいですね。
But secretly, I think I heard a rumor that he's on Facebook or something, so I don't know. I don't understand.
People will be searching right now on Facebook. All right.
検索しますよ。
Probably has a good profile photo, right? Do a little self picture. All right. Next one comes from, let's see here, Game Taunton. Game Taunton wants to know, are you done with the Snatcher and Police Knots universes? Could the LA studio take over one of them?
スナッチャー、ポリスノーツはもうあれで完結してるんですか？ LA スタジオとかでそれでかけることはないんですか？
ですね、僕は作るつもりはないですけど、誰かあれを今のテクノロジーで今の設定に変えて、リメイクしてくれるんであれば協力はしたいですけど、なかなかそんな物好きはいないと思いますので、今のところは、リブートはないですね。
Well, I myself, I'm not. I probably wouldn't participate directly, but if someone wants to adapt any of those games to current technology, to current settings, to current gameplay, I would definitely support that person. I would definitely help out that person, but I don't think there are too many people like that. So for the time being, I don't think anything is going on there.
I guess this ties into that too. This is from Lucas Gigliotti. He says, do you plan to remake the MSX's MGs and MGS with the Fox engine? Extra can I hope for Zoe 3? So the idea, I guess, of remaking some of the old games, which is a trend we've seen with some franchises.
似たような質問で過去のゲームを蘇らせるという意味で、MSX のメタルギア2、あるいは今後ゾイ3をなんか作っていくっていう予定がありますか？
ゾイ3はやりたかったんですけど、今のところ担当者が不在というかいないので、いついつっていうのは言えないですね。結構、2年ぐらい前は真剣に動き出してたんですけど、ちょっとうまくいかなかったので、今ちょっと先送りになっています。
For Zoe 3, I was really looking forward to make the game, but right now we're facing several difficulties. I don't have anyone that is in charge of that project. So around 2 years ago, actually, I was moving very seriously towards making this game happen. But right now, we had several difficulties, and the game has been put as a project for the future.
ゾイはロボットアニメのゲームですけど、日本ですごい人気があるんですけど、やっぱりワールドワイドで売れてほしいので、僕はそのロード・オブ・ザ・リングスみたいなファンタジーのゾイを作ろうとして、それをユーザーに問いかけたら、それはやめてくれと言われたんで、今ちょっとその企画はちょっと立ち消えになっています。
So Zoe is a robot animation that is highly popular in Japan. The Japanese market really relates to this, but I want something that can relate to anyone, all people worldwide. So I kind of wanted to make something like Lord of the Rings, some Zoe epic robot adventure that had more elements, maybe resembling Lord of the Rings. But when I laid out that idea to the gaming community, I got very clear that the people didn't want that to happen. So that project has been shifted towards the future.
MSX のメタル1と2は、そこにつながるようにファントムペインは作ってるんですけど、結構無理してきたので、微妙におかしなところがいっぱいできてきてですね、本当ならそれをリメイクして、正しいサークルで円がつながるようにやりたいんですけど、なかなか、今の、テクノロジーで、新世代のゲームを作るとすごい、スタッフ関わらないと作れないので、今のところは計画にはないです。
For MSX's Metal Gear 1, Metal Gear 2, I'm creating the Phantom Pain and Ground Zero's Metal Gear Solid 5 in a way that it all completes a cycle. But because we have been forcing a little bit the story to do this, several discrepancies have popped up. So ideally, I would like to remake Metal Gear 1, Metal Gear 2, so they have all the proper connections that close, that don't close this cycle. But the problem is that with current technology, for current consoles, to develop a game, you need a lot of people, a rather large team to work on this, and right now we don't have that at Alcan. So right now it is not those games are not in the plans.
Right. Okay. And speaking of sort of, discrepancies, this question comes from Jose Melanas, and he says, is Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops considered canon or not?
そのストーリーが一致しているかどうかで、メタルギアソリッドポータブルオプスはストーリーのオフィシャルメイン筋に本筋に入ってるんでしょうか？
これは難しいですから、僕はプロデューサーだったんで、当然企画内容も見てますけど、自分で書いたストーリーではないので、なんでしょうね、細かいところを言うと、メタルギアサーガからそれてるところがかなりの、ありまして、なので、なんて言うんでしょうね、ストーリーライン的にはサーガの中に入ってますけど、細かいところで言うと、ちょっと、本流からはそれてるような感じです。
That is a very difficult question. For Portable Ops, I was a producer, so of course I saw the plannings. I went through all the game. but I didn't write the story myself, so some of the details are a bit off. So how to put it, when you dive into the details, there are several small things that don't seem to be according to the overall Metal Gear saga, that seem to be outside of this world. So to put it in a way, I guess the main storyline of Portal of Ops is part of the saga, is part of the official Metal Gear timeline, while some of the small details that are in Portal of Ops are outside the saga, are not a part of, let's say, the main timeline of the game.
なんていうんですか、メインかどうかっていうよりも、僕が監督脚本ゲームデザインをしたそのヒデオコジマゲームっていうのと僕がプロデュースしたものを僕の中では分けて表現しているっていう感じです。
So more than saying if it's officially a part of the main Metal Gear saga or not, inside me I do make a difference. I separate them as games where I was a producer, game designer, writer, director, those ones that I titled a Hideo Kojima game. From those where I participate as producer or I have a different role, I do have in my mind separate these two.
All right, we only have time for a couple more questions, but let's get to them. This question is from Talia and that Baja, and that says, will Ground Zeroes receive any additional DLC to add more side ops so the wait for Phantom Pain won't feel so long?
グランドゼロスの DLC サイドアップス、TVP までの時間あんまり長く感じられないように入るんですか？
ですね、それやりたいんですけど、それやるとファントムペインが遅れるので今のところはないです。
I actually really want to do that, but if I start working on that, then the Phantom Pain will be delayed. So as of now, that's not that is not in the plans.
Okay. Fair enough. This question comes from George Broussard from 3D Realms, who did Duke Nukem and everything. He says, what was your favorite Metal Gear game to work on?
3D ラームズのジョージ・ブルサード、レミデベロッパーなんですけど、自分が関わった中で仕事した中で一番楽しかったメタルギアは何でしょうか？
ですね、これはもうメタルギアソリッドの1です。
This has to be Metal Gear Solid 1.
それまでは僕は、一ゲームデザイナーとしてプロジェクトに参画してたんですけど、メタルギアソリッド1からはある種経営をやりながらプロデューサーをやりながら、ゲームクリエイトしたので、それこそ人集めから会社を東京に作って何もかもやりながら開発をやってたんで非常に苦しかったですけど楽しかったです。
Up to that point, I had been in games as a game designer only. With Metal Gear Solid 1, I was fortunate enough to handle the role also as a producer, to handle the economic side, also as a game creator. So I had to start with putting a team of people together, establishing my own team in Tokyo. I had to do pretty much everything for that game, which was very tough. I had very rough times. It was a very difficult time, but at the same time, it was really fun.
メタルギアソリッドがこんなに売れるっていうのは全く思ってなかったので、売れるためにこうするとかじゃ全くなかったんですよ。だから本当に好きなものを入れようっていうことで軍人訓練もしましたし、スワットの人と一緒に訓練とかしましたけど、あの頃はだからその売れるためとかこんだけ売れないといけませんよっていうそういう重圧もなかったので本当に自由に作りました。
Neither me nor anyone else expected Metal Gear Solid to sell at all. So I was fortunate because I didn't have to think I have to sell this game this much. So pretty much all I did was put in that game all the things I really like. To achieve that, we went through military training. We went to SWAT team demonstrations. I didn't think at all of how to make this game sell well because I didn't expect it to sell. Also, people surrounding me didn't have any expectations. I had the pressure of you have to sell at least this much. So that was really good.
Excellent. Well, I think we're out of time here, but anything else you want to say to all the fans watching on Twitch around the world?
ですけど、ファンの皆様に何か伝えたいことがありますか？
ですね、グラウンドゼロズをやっていただければファントムペインがどういうゲームなのか 多分分かると思います。ファントム、グランドゼロはその小さなエリアで、ミッションをやりますけど、基本は何度でも遊べるようなああいうゲームになってます。で、ファントムペインになるとそこにいろんな要素がどんどん加わっていきますので、天候とか時間の変化とかも入りますし、自分の基地の運営みたいな要素もどんどん入ってくるので、なるべく、すごくソリッドな形で、グラウンドゼロズっていうのがありますので、あれで楽しんでいただいて、そこから、そこがまさにグラウンドゼロになるので、皆さんにとってのそこから想像を広げてもらえれば、おのずとですね、ファントムペインの全体像が見えてくるのかなと思いますので、ぜひ、来週発売なんで楽しみにしてください。
Well, for Ground Zeroes, I want people, when you play Ground Zeroes out there, you will be able to understand what kind of game is the Phantom Pain. You know, Ground Zeroes is a relatively small area, but all the basics are there, all the things, all the elements that you go and play over and over again. The Phantom Pain will just have more elements into this. We'll have weather, we'll have time changes, we'll have some elements like you having to manage your own base. But all the solid elements, the core elements that have to be in there are all in Ground Zeroes. So what I want this game to become is a Ground Zero for you, for everything to start there. And from there it will be an actual extension. You will be able to imagine what the Phantom Pain is. So all Ground Zeroes releases next week. Please give it a shot. Try it.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and everyone around the world as part of Ask Him Anything, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on Twitter, and maybe you're going to stream your game on Twitch now?
今度なんか Twitch でやりますか？
そうですね。
Twitter でも楽しみにしてます。
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Kojima. Appreciate it.
Thank you.